Is going on, guys? It's Yuji. Welcome to this video where I will talk about top 5 tips in SSF for Ultimatum League and Path of Exile 3.14 in general. So if you're still wondering, why should I play SSF? I made a video about that too, so check that one out. I'll link it below. Released at the same time as this one, also for the current patch, and I'll go about why I think you should be trying SSF, at least trying it out in this current patch. And in this video, I will go about how you try it out in this current patch and why it is actually pretty damn amazing to do so. So here you have like a little bit of an overview of what's coming, and I won't really don't want to really spoil too much, but yeah, there's something you have to choose. There's something you have to do, but also you have to do something else. Sixlinks, they're very important, and they can be a bit tedious to get, so I'll give you some tips for those. How to revisit, rethink, and relearn aspects of PoE differently in solo-selffound, and that's something that's really important, and a lot of people skimp out on, that you should not skimp out on. Aside from, of course, subscribing to this YouTube channel for more awesome Path of Exile content. If you skimp out on that one, you're doing it wrong. Alright, first of all, build choice. It's important to choose a build, the correct build. That's the same for Trade League, but in SSF there are some caveats that still apply. For the most part though, the more usual starter builds, they'll still work. Minus, of course, ones that require very specific uniques that you cannot farm. So if you have a farmable unique, such as like this one, the one over there, Sire of Shards. Let's say you want to play for some reason a Sire of Shards using build. That thing is very farmable, even in the campaign. You can farm that in Lunaris Temple, the Lunaris Priestess Divination card. Very easy to get, very easy to farm. That's not a problem. You can even farm that thing over there. So you can farm a Shavron's Wrappings. That's not a problem as well. So if you can see, if you have a farmable divination card, you can start a build that has that. You just have to keep in mind the farming and yeah, have a plan for it. The other thing you can also start with is farmable boss drops. So you can see over there Crown of the Inward Eye and Ziri's Promise. Those are very farmable. Like if you know you've gotten to Ziri's before, you will get to Ziri's every league. You have no problem killing Ziri's on a league starting type build. Then you can probably kill enough Ziri's to get your hands on a Crown of the Inward Eye in solo-selffound without any issues. Same is true for Ziri. If you know you can kill a Ziri, then you can find it at Ziri's Promise. Those are the most common drops. Now, of course, if you're like, I want to try a Savior build, that's a very rare drop, so you might not want to do that. But you get the deal. That's kind of like roughly what we're looking at here. Also, some very common prophecies can be used, but that's a bit more risky because prophecies are a bit more random than boss loot or divination cards. And but yeah, if you feel that's a bit too restrictive, so you're basically narrowing down the league starting build pool already on top of like what is possible in trade, then a lot of people feel like, I don't really have that many cool builds I can play in SSF. But that's only really true for the first character. Of course, it depends on the items you find, but the build variety in general is much larger for second and third builds. And I think another like a plus side of SSF is that you might try builds that you otherwise wouldn't try. I think that's a really cool thing for SSF, because let's say you never really played a Mjolnir build, but suddenly, boom, a Mjolnir dropped on the ground right in front of your character. Might as well try and make a build with it, right? So SSF creates these incentives, so while the build variety is a bit smaller, you might end up trying or playing builds that are very different from what you're used to, and you might end up actually enjoying it. Ooh, imagine enjoying builds that you don't know. The next one is plan and improvise. They seem a bit contradictory, but I think it's important in SSF to do both things equally well and have a really good plan, but also know when it's good to not stick to it and when to deviate from it. So I think you really want to plan out how to get the most important key items for your build, like really like how you want to farm them, what divination cards do you need. This goes as far as like planning in for Atlas passives that make it easier to maybe farm a divination card, maybe get certain unique items or whatnot. Such as, for example, Aziri's Foible last league I farmed with while using the Kadiro has 5 times better rewards type node, which has a way higher chance, or gives you a way higher chance to find at least a bit more rare unique items, and also the very rare unique items, such as Aziri's Foible. So that was really nice. Map completion is a really important one, and it's red. By the way, if anything is red in here, it's more for like a pay attention type of thing. If it's yellow or orangish, it's more of a just like a general positive highlight. So map completion can be tricky, because if you want to farm, for example, a residence map last league for the Dapper Prodigy card, which is a sixlink card, then you might not want to complete certain maps. So it's like really important to sometimes plan ahead in SSF, because we cannot uncomplete maps anymore, right? Also, like currency, know where to get certain aspects of currency, types of currency, such as you can see below, chance orbs, ancient orbs, and so on, and know what you want to do with each currency type. So, for example, if you have a okay, I want a chance for, let's say, a soul tether, as you can see up there, you keep your chance orbs for that. Maybe you want an ancient orb for, I don't know, a Lycosidae shield, so you keep your ancient orbs for that, and so on. And the same is true for like scarabs as well, and that brings me basically to the next point. Plan ahead and use your resources wisely. Know what you want to use your resources and use them for that purpose very well. That really helps. So not just like toss your scarabs in like that, but like use your, for example, divination scarabs, as you can see there on the maps, on the juiced maps that drop the divination card you want to farm. So if you want to farm Pledge of Hands, you really want that the pack card to drop, and that is pretty rare. So you really want to invest into your resources into actually maximizing that. So that all requires a lot of game knowledge. I don't think you need super crazy game knowledge, but definitely have plans and have ideas on how to get each item that you kind of want or put into a POB or whatever. But if RNGs really insists that you do something, you maybe should do it. You can re-roll, you can respec your character, you can adjust your plans. Maybe you were not planning on using a soul tether, but you find one, and it really fits well with your build, and maybe better. Like you might, with the items that you currently have, you might be able to make a better, different version of the build that you initially. How do you say this? So if you make a build, let's say make like a Lacerate champion, Lacerate gladiator, and you planned it in a certain way. But you also thought like, okay, maybe I could play it in this way or another way, like 3 ways. But 3 ways to play the build, and you decided on way A, and you think A is the best way to play the build. But you get all the items for the B way to play the build. Even if you think the B way, when fully geared out, is worse than the A way when fully geared out, if you have the full gear for version B, and you don't have any decent gear, or like only just some decent gear for A, your current version of the B build that you can make might be better than the current version of the A build that you can make. So you want to maybe respec and adjust your plans if the drops you are getting are for a different build. An example would be, I wanted to really play an Unleash, Arc, and Ball Lightning Archmage character. Like go crit with a staff and all that type of stuff. But then I found a Pledge of Hands, so I respec'd into a Spell Echo version because I kind of wanted to try that. I got an Azir's Foible and a Pledge of Hands in SSF really early, and I decided to make that work. And I think that version was better than the Unleash version that I had without all the cool Unleash stuff yet. So yeah, be flexible, try new things, try to look a bit more outside your bubble, outside your plans. If something happens to happen, something rare and powerful happens to drop. I think that's the main takeaway from this. But have a plan. And this kind of goes in the same vein, but differently, not just for builds and for plans, but also in general, like revisit, rethink, relearn by basically your preconceived notions about PoE. Because if you're like me and you have played, like for example, trade, I even played like hardcore trade and then like went to softcore trade and then went to SSF softcore over the years. And every time you have to like get rid of some habits, some preconceived notions that you might be having, such as upgrades that you need for your build might be behind systems that you normally ignored. So either way, you maybe decided the mechanic is not worth doing in Trade League because profit-wise not worth you. Instead, skip the mechanic and buy the reward from that mechanic with your currency. So, such a thing might be prophecies. A lot of people like maybe don't spam prophecies as much, or like don't follow certain prophecy chains because they don't think it's worth it, or that they just never really looked into it because they kind of ignored the mechanic. Maybe you don't do Katarina, so you don't have like a Cinder Swallow Urn, but you need it for your current build. You're playing like an Ignite build that really benefits from this thing. So you actually have to do Katarina. You actually have to learn how to maximize your Katarina farms, and I think that's a really cool thing in a way that SSF pushes you towards learning new things. So don't try to resist that. The same true for like vendor recipes, league mechanics, crafting methods, like everything the game has to offer. You might eventually like actually have to dip into that you previously maybe have ignored. And SSF really gives you the leeway to do that, because you do never feel like you're wasting money if you're like doing something so optimally. At least I feel less that way in SSF. And yeah, you basically can't rely on your usual trade strats that you might be using, like buying currency. You can't just be like, alterations are gone, let me buy like 4 alterations for another 2 exalts and go again. No, you actually have to get new alterations now. So those strategies might not work, so you have to like plan differently. Like you can't plan for just, I'm gonna put like 3,000 alterations on this axe and then it's gonna turn out alright. you can't. So you have to be like, okay, how else can I craft? Okay, maybe I can grab some jagged fossils, maybe I can grab some harvests, maybe I can just chaos spam it. Okay, man, that kind of feels wrong. But everything else is like pretty good. But yeah, chaos spamming is in SSF is a bit tricky because Zana mods are so good, right? The Zana map crafts. You can't buy carries, you can't buy juice for maps. So as I said, the resource management goes into this. You want to use your scarabs wisely and with purpose on each map, with like in synergy with Atlas passes and so on in late game to actually maximize the items you need for your build. And then sixlinks, as I said, are a bit tricky. So there are two types of sixlinks. There's the just get any sixlink early to get some nice damage, get like a mid-tier sixlink that's usable but not fantastic, and then there is get your endgame sixlink. And these are like three different things that you want to do. Good ways to acquire like early to mid game sixlinks are Heist. Heist drops sixlink either unique armors, but it also drops sixlink normal armors from the armor thing. The armor nodes. They drop from agility. They spawn in agility, trap, disarmament, deception, and engineering. And I think they're pretty damn nice. They also drop a lot of 5-links, so 5-link of course would be the next step to a 6-link, but 5-links are pretty common these days. You could sometimes get unlucky in SSF and like struggle to get a 5-link early, but yeah. Wild side areas, also a good way, mainly because they drop corrupted 6-links, so they can be a bit tricky because sometimes you can't really use them, but they drop them quite frequently, so it's not that bad. You can farm divination cards. I think a very popular method is to farm a tabula rasa from either the vanity cards or the humility cards. I think both methods are pretty fine. I prefer these days the humility version because that also allows you to map more, but vanity can also work if you prefer that, and it gives you a corrupted version, which can have something useful like +2 to Warcry gems, yay! So sometimes it's lucky, sometimes not. But yeah, there are also other divination cards such as Chains That Bind, Dapper Prodigy, Imperial Legacy, the Dark Mage, and the Porcupine. These are some of the more farmable ones. And these are all ones that I farmed myself before in SSF. There are also other ones, for example, the Warlord for the 6-link, I level 83 Coronal Maul, I think, but that one's way rarer than these. So these are the most farmable ones. There are some other ones that are farmable, such as well, what's it called? The one that gives you a 6-link armor evasion, armor ES base that you could chance in the Vault's Protector. That one, but they're a bit more rare. They're a bit more annoying to farm, but yeah. Overall, 6-links are a bit of a tricky spot. In a tricky spot for SSF sometimes, because if you want a specific 6-link, you can't really do that much. You can save up 1,500 fusings, use the Delve recipe, and try to get that. But then sometimes the freaking Delve cities don't show up until like the depth like 400 something, so it takes you forever. There are a lot of things, but there are some builds. You can either play a build that is not super reliant on a 6-link, but eventually you always want one, right? So Archmage builds, for example, have the downside of being reliant on a 6-link because of how good that extra mana multiplier is, while some other builds that are just like really powerful in general don't really rely as much on a 6-link. But yeah, overall, just don't get unlucky really helps, but can't always do that. So if this gets too annoying, I don't think there's a too bad. It's too bad to just convert out of SSF because this stuff can get quite annoying. But there are some ways, there are some tips for that, which is, I think, 6-linking is still one of the main downsides of SSF in my opinion. And lastly, one of the most important things I saved for last, probably the most important thing, have a good loot filter and a specific one to you. You have to make in my opinion, you have to make your own loot filter in SSF. At least it's way better that way. Because, as I said earlier, the SSF experience is very specific to you. And there are two ways to approach SSF, I think, for loot filter making and like the whole league approach in general. You can either make like a build-specific loot filter, so while you're playing your first character, you only really pick up loot, rare items, and stuff for this one character. That way you will progress that character way faster, because you will find, like, you will map faster and stuff because you don't pick up as much stuff, and that way you will have a better time on that specific character. But if you then make a second build, you won't have that much general good items. So for example, if you're playing like, say, like a slam melee build, picking up all the armor bases, armor evasion bases, life pieces, stash them, like, to have like a bit of an item base for your build, and then you switch to like a second build, and that's like a freaking low life or like CI occultist cold dot. Completely different items. So you have 0 rares for that build, you have 0 items for that build, except for maybe some uniques you want. And that way, the second approach is better for playing multiple builds, which is to pick up general items, general rares all the time, stash good rares for different specific builds, and do it that way. But either way, adjust your loot filter all the time. I think that's one of the most important things. You will start out very differently than what happens later. So let's say if I find a specific, let's say I find my Crown of the Inward Eye, that is best in slot for my build. I can now, if I'm on the build specific thing, I can now, like strategy, I can now stop picking up other helmets. I have the best in slot. I don't need any other helmets, so you hide helmets now. That way you progress faster because you don't waste time IDing items that you will never use. Because you won't sell them to anyone. The only thing that matters is what you need. So that's how your loot filter should look like. You can hide like super valuable, you can hide freaking valuable divination cards. If you don't need the item, who cares? But then you might want to play a second build. That's why I mentioned the general approach as well. Yeah, the best way in my opinion to start is filterblade.xyz. is the never-sync loot filter website, customizing website. It has, as you can see, like awesome menus and stuff where you can click through and make your loot filter happen. I think the most important things to adjust all the time is currency, uniques, rare items. Those are, in my opinion, the most important ones. And you want to re-tier them. So if there's a unique, let's say, I don't know, I needed a power amulet, a Xeris foible last league, very much. So I put that on the S tier, the one that makes like a swing, Mirror of Calandra type sound. Because that was how important it was for my build. If that item drops, that's like amazing. Nothing better can drop currently. Like that's, but at some point that was the best upgrade for my build. So you want to make sure you don't miss it. You don't want your most valuable upgrade to make like a boop sound that you might miss in like whatever is happening. You're clearing like legions in a delirious map and to her like a boop and you're like, it's probably confusing. I'm not going back for a fusing. You want your items that you are valuable to you, no matter how much they are on trade, to make big sounds. So re-tier some items that are important to your character. I think that's very, very good because you don't want to miss them. And you start showing a lot of items early on. Like you want to pick up some chromatics, some whetstones. You want to have like all the currency types available. But once you say, let's say you left like 200 whetstones in your friggin' stash tab lying around, you can start hiding them. And you should start hiding them so you don't map super slow because you're not picking up new items. So you want to go up in strictness and you want to hide more and more stuff as you go. That's basically the whole thing. So I usually remake my loot filter every few days, early in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Like usually you start with a base that I already have and like hide more items and go along with that. So yeah, that's my main tips. I think they're all very, very important. So please take them to heart if playing SSF. I think they will do you very good. And if you're playing SSF and you want to brag about how you're playing SSF to other people, I have t-shirts for that. I also have a coffee mug for that. So if you're looking for a way to support the channel, that's one possible way to support the channel. To buy some merch, links down below, and yeah, show people that you are playing SSF, by the way, or that you prefer Weirdo over elemental damage with attack skills. Who says that? Everyone says Weirdo, right? That's the correct way to say that. Also, thanks to my Patreon supporters. As always, you guys are amazing. I'm Yoji, and I will see you in SSF.